The Red Queen, Sex and the Evolution of Human Nature by Matt Ridley. Here's a question that sounds absurd at first. Why do we have sex? I know. Your first thought is probably to make babies, obviously. But here's the twist that'll blow your mind. Biologically speaking, sex is actually a terrible way to reproduce. Picture this: a creature that can clone itself perfectly. No need for dating apps, awkward first dates, or compromising on whose family to visit for the holidays. Just boom. Perfect copy. Done. Within a few generations, her descendants would massively outnumber creatures like us, who have to go through all the trouble of finding a partner, only to pass on a measly half of our genes. The other half? Handed over to someone else's genetic legacy. And to make matters worse, half the kids we produce are males who can't even have babies themselves. From evolution's cold, calculating perspective, this is bonkers. It's like volunteering to run a race with one leg tied behind your back. Yet here we are. From tiny insects to massive whales, and definitely us humans, sex is absolutely everywhere. This mind-bending puzzle is exactly what scientist and author Matt Ridley tackles in his brilliant book, The Red Queen, Sex and the Evolution of Human Nature. This isn't your typical dry biology textbook. It's more like a scientific detective thriller, hunting down the answer to evolution's greatest mystery. And along the way, Ridley reveals the hidden forces that sculpted everything about us. Why men and women's brains work differently, why we fall head over heels in love, why jealousy can drive us crazy, why we're obsessed with beauty, and even why our brains became these ridiculously oversized thinking machines. Today we're diving deep into the Red Queen's world. By the end, you'll see that human nature isn't some random cultural accident. It's a masterpiece carved out by the ruthless, relentless logic of sexual competition. You'll discover that everything from a peacock's flamboyant tail to the human mind itself is part of an ancient, never-ending evolutionary arms race. Just like the Red Queen in Alice's Through the Looking Glass, we're all running as fast as we possibly can, just to stay in the same place. Let's kick things off with a puzzle that stumped biology's greatest minds for decades: the twofold cost of sex. Imagine two species side by side. The first reproduces asexually. Every individual is female, churning out perfect clone daughters. The second species is sexual, like us, with males and females doing their thing. First generation. Both the asexual female and the sexual female have one daughter each. Seems fair, right? But watch what happens next. In generation 2, the asexual mom and her daughter both have daughters. That's 4 individuals total. Meanwhile, the sexual mom might have had a son and a daughter. Only the daughter can reproduce. The son? Dead end. Reproductively speaking, the sexual species is growing at half the speed. Do the math forward, and the asexual species would absolutely dominate. Sexual reproduction, with its need to produce these reproductively useless males, is like entering a race with a massive handicap. So why hasn't natural selection just eliminated it? For ages, scientists offered a tidy explanation. Sex was good for the species as a whole. Mix up the genes, create variety, and the species adapts faster, avoiding extinction. Sounds reasonable, right? Wrong. In the 1960s, biologist George Williams dropped a bomb on this theory. Evolution doesn't give a damn about the good of the species. It's ruthlessly focused on individual genes getting into the next generation. An animal doesn't care if its species thrives in 1,000 years. It cares about having more babies than its neighbors right now. And an asexual female will always win that race. If one human woman suddenly developed the ability to clone herself, her descendants would rapidly outcompete the rest of us, stuck producing sons who can't give birth. The old theory crumbled. So the mystery deepened. Scientists scrambled for new explanations. Maybe sex was about DNA repair? Perhaps mixing genes helped fix mutations? Another idea, called Muller's ratchet, suggested that asexual lineages accumulate harmful mutations with no way to purge them, like a ratchet clicking in only one direction. Sex shuffles the deck and could potentially create mutation-free individuals. Clever ideas, but not quite convincing enough. They worked too slowly. They couldn't explain why it was worth the massive cost of producing males. The scientific community was genuinely stumped. Our most fundamental biological feature made zero sense. Then came a brilliant new idea, inspired by Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland. The Red Queen. Remember the scene? Alice is running alongside the Red Queen, sprinting faster and faster, but somehow they're not getting anywhere. Alice, completely winded, gasps, "Well, in our country, you'd generally get to somewhere else if you ran very fast for a long time." The Queen replies, "A slow sort of country. Now here, you see, it takes all the running you can do to keep in the same place." This became the perfect metaphor for a revolutionary new understanding of evolution. Biologists realized that a creature's biggest challenge isn't the weather or finding dinner. It's other living things that are also evolving. Predators get faster, so prey must get faster too. Nobody actually gets ahead, but both have to keep running just to survive. Life is one massive, relentless arms race. And the most dangerous enemy in this race: parasites. For every creature on Earth, there's an army of bacteria, viruses, and fungi constantly trying to invade, consume, and hijack you for their own reproduction. We're perpetually under siege. Here's the kicker. Parasites evolve insanely faster than we do. A human generation takes about 30 years. A bacterial generation? 30 minutes. In your lifetime, the bacteria in your body will cycle through more generations than humans have experienced since we split from apes. This creates a terrifying evolutionary problem. Your body is essentially a fortress with genetic locks on your cells, and parasites are constantly evolving better keys to break in. Say you have a gene that creates a super effective lock, making you resistant to the current disease. Great for you, but your success makes that lock common in the population. And once it's common, you can bet parasites will focus all their evolutionary firepower on creating a key that picks it. The very defense that protected your parents might be the vulnerability that dooms you. And here, finally, we discover the immediate, powerful benefit of sex. Sex is how you change the locks with every generation. By combining your genes with someone else's, you create a unique new combination of genetic locks in your kids. You're shuffling the deck, presenting parasites with a constantly moving target. The parasites, perfectly adapted to infect you, will find your children to be a completely new puzzle. Asexuality, by contrast, is like building a fortress and giving every single descendant the exact same locks. Once a parasite cracks the code, your entire lineage is toast. Sex isn't primarily about reproduction. It's about staying one step ahead in the never-ending arms race against disease. It's a defense mechanism so vital that it's worth the enormous cost of producing males and sacrificing half your genetic legacy. This Red Queen theory is the beating heart of Ridley's book, and it's genuinely revolutionary. But we're only scratching the surface. Once we understand why sex exists, we can start asking much juicier questions. Like, if sex is a partnership, why are the partners so wildly different? Why do we have two distinct sexes, male and female, instead of everyone being hermaphrodites who can play both roles? The answer, Ridley explains, involves another conflict, not with parasites, but within our own cells. Inside your cells are tiny structures called mitochondria, the powerhouses that generate energy. But here's a secret. Mitochondria were once independent bacteria that got absorbed into our ancestral cells billions of years ago. They still carry their own separate genes. Here's the problem. Mitochondria only pass down from mothers, through the egg. The sperm's mitochondria get destroyed at fertilization. Imagine if that weren't the case. If both parents contributed mitochondria, Your cells would contain two competing sets of mitochondrial genes. You'd have a destructive civil war in every cell, each set trying to replicate at the other's expense, ultimately destroying the cell they both depend on. Evolution's elegant solution? One sex gives up the fight entirely. One sex produces small, mobile gametes, sperm, carrying only nuclear genes and ditching everything else. The other sex produces large, resource-rich gametes, eggs, containing all the necessary cellular machinery, including mitochondria. And just like that, two sexes were born. Males became specialists in finding eggs. Females became specialists in nurturing them. This simple division, born from a microscopic conflict, set the stage for all the differences we see between men and women today. Which brings us to the next major theme, sexual selection. Now that we've got two sexes with different strategies, a whole new type of competition kicks in. It's not just about surviving anymore. It's about reproducing. And since females invest way more in each offspring, 9 months of pregnancy, nursing, usually most of the childcare, they become the choosier sex. A female has a limited number of children she can possibly have. Each one is a massive investment. Males, though? They can potentially father hundreds or thousands of children. Their minimum investment can literally be a few minutes. This fundamental imbalance, first identified by biologist Robert Trivers, means females generally compete for quality partners, while males compete for quantity. And this competition drives some of nature's most bizarre and beautiful features. Take the peacock's tail. That stunning, iridescent train isn't for flying. It's definitely not camouflage. In fact, it's a huge liability, making peacocks slow, conspicuous to predators, and requiring enormous energy to grow and maintain. So why does it exist? Because peahens think it's hot. For countless generations, peahens have preferred mating with males sporting the most extravagant tails. But this just shifts the question. Why would peahens develop such a seemingly ridiculous and dangerous preference? Ridley explores two major theories. The first is Ronald Fisher's runaway selection. It starts with a simple, maybe even random preference. Perhaps way back when, peahens had a slight, arbitrary thing for males with longer tails. A female choosing a long-tailed male would have long-tailed sons, but she'd also pass her preference for long tails to her daughters. This creates a self-reinforcing loop. As more females prefer long tails, long-tailed males get more action. And because long-tailed males are more successful, females who don't prefer them are at a disadvantage. Their short-tailed sons will be rejected. Fashion becomes a tyrant. The preference and the trait spiral together, creating ever more extreme tails, until the survival cost becomes so enormous it can't go further. It's basically beauty for beauty's sake, all because it leads to sexy sons. The second theory is the handicap principle, proposed by Amos Zahavi. This idea suggests the tail isn't arbitrary at all. It's an honest advertisement of genetic quality. The tail is so costly and difficult to produce that only a genuinely healthy, strong, well-fed male can pull off a spectacular one. It's like someone buying a Ferrari, not just transportation, but a signal that they have so much money they can afford to waste it on something impractical. The handicap proves fitness. A weak or sickly peacock simply can't fake a magnificent tail. And what's the best indicator of good genes? The ability to resist parasites. The Hamilton-Zook hypothesis connects this back to the Red Queen. A bird's plumage is a billboard for health. Bright, vibrant feathers are something parasite-riddled birds cannot maintain. When a peahen chooses the male with the most stunning tail, she may unconsciously be selecting the male with the best immune system, the best set of genetic locks to pass to her offspring in the endless race against disease. These two ideas, runaway fashion and honest advertising, aren't mutually exclusive, but they point to the same conclusion. Female choice is a massively powerful evolutionary force. So how does this apply to us humans? In the rest of the book, Ridley takes these principles and applies them directly to human nature. He argues that, like most mammals, men have been fundamentally shaped by competition with other men for reproductive opportunities. Throughout history, power and wealth have consistently translated into reproductive success. From ancient rulers like the Inca king Atahualpa, with his thousands of concubines, to tribal chiefs and modern billionaires, high-status men have, on average, had more children. This created powerful selective pressure for ambition, competitiveness, and risk-taking in the male psyche. The male mind is designed to seek status because, for millennia, status was the currency that bought access to mates. Women, conversely, have been shaped by the need to be choosy. A woman's reproductive success wasn't limited by access to men, but by access to resources and the quality of genes she could secure for her children. This led to a dual strategy. First, women evolved to value signs of status, wealth, and commitment in long-term partners. A man's ability to provide and protect directly impacted her children's survival. This is the origin of the pair bond or marriage, a social contract, where a male trades investment for a female's reproductive loyalty. This is what makes us so different from chimpanzees, where fathers play zero role in raising offspring. But here's the dilemma. The best provider might not have the best genes. The kind, reliable, hardworking guy might not be the strongest, healthiest, or most dominant. This leads to the second part of female strategy, what Ridley calls the Emma Bovary strategy. Recent genetic studies of supposedly monogamous birds revealed a shocking secret. Adultery is everywhere. Many female birds form stable pair bonds with reliable, hard-working males who help raise the young. But they frequently sneak off for extra pair copulations with neighboring males who are more dominant, attractive, or genetically superior. They're essentially securing a good father for their children while getting the best possible genes from elsewhere. Ridley suggests a similar dynamic-shaped human female psychology. While the primary strategy is securing a committed, investing partner, the strategy of cuckoldry, having an affair to secure better genes, has always been a powerful secondary option. This explains a lot about human sexuality that otherwise seems paradoxical. The universal existence of sexual jealousy, especially male jealousy focused on sexual infidelity, and anatomical evidence from human testes, which are intermediate in size between the small testes of faithful gorillas and the large testes of promiscuous chimpanzees, suggesting a history of monogamy plagued by adultery. This evolutionary chess game between the sexes has profoundly impacted our minds. Ridley argues that differences between male and female brains aren't just cultural artifacts. They're the result of millions of years of different selective pressures. Men's brains, for instance, show advantages in certain spatial skills, like map reading and mental rotation. This may be a legacy from when the primary male role was hunting, requiring navigation over long distances and aiming at moving targets. Women's brains show advantages in verbal fluency, social intelligence, and object location memory, skills vital for gatherers who needed to remember locations of thousands of different plants, and for mothers navigating complex tribal social dynamics. Men are drawn to youth and physical signs of fertility in women, clear skin, full lips, hourglass figures, because these are honest signals of reproductive value. A man in our evolutionary past, who chose an older, less fertile partner, left fewer descendants. Women are drawn to signs of status, ambition, and resources in men, because these signaled a man could provide for her and her children. This explains the universal pattern of rich, powerful men often marrying young, beautiful women. It's not a cultural invention, it's ancient, evolved desires playing out. But Ridley saves his most audacious idea for last. What about our most unique human trait, our massive, creative, intelligent brain? Why did one ape species suddenly develop a brain 3 times larger than its ancestors? Traditional answers, tool-making, hunting, gathering, don't quite hold up. Other animals do these things without needing to invent calculus or compose symphonies. The pressure wasn't strong enough. Psychologist Geoffrey Miller proposed a radical alternative, one Ridley champions: the human brain is our peacock's tail. It's an organ of sexual selection, a courtship device. As our ancestors became choosier about mates, they began selecting not just for physical traits but mental ones. They started preferring partners who were witty, creative, funny, articulate, and interesting. Intelligence became sexy. This created another runaway feedback loop. A man who could tell better stories, or a woman who could crack wittier jokes, became more attractive. Their children inherited both greater intelligence and the preference for it. The mind became a stage for dazzling courtship displays. Our art, music, humor, language, our very consciousness, all of it, in this view, is elaborate plumage we evolved to attract and retain mates. We're the ape that domesticated itself, and we did it by turning our minds into the most complex and beautiful ornaments in the natural world. The Red Queen ultimately isn't just a theory about parasites. It's a framework for understanding that all life is a competitive game. We're in an arms race with disease, which gave us sex. We're in an arms race with members of our own sex for access to the other, which gave us ambition and courtship. And we're in a delicate, cooperative yet conflicting dance with the other sex, which gave us love, marriage, and jealousy. Our human nature is the product of this endless, churning, creative conflict. We are, and always have been, running as fast as we can just to stay in the same place. So what do we actually do with all this? The Red Queen is one of those rare books that fundamentally shifts how you see the world and yourself. It can feel unsettling at first, because it pulls back the curtain on the deepest parts of our psychology and reveals they're not driven by logic or high-minded ideals, but by ancient evolutionary pressures. The most powerful lesson: our nature is a story of conflict. There's conflict with the outside world, the endless race against parasites that gave us sexual reproduction and individuality. But more profoundly, there's internal conflict. The conflict between men and women, each shaped by different strategies to achieve the same goal, passing on their genes. And conflict within ourselves, the desire for stable, loving partnership versus the temptation of infidelity, ambition for status versus the need for cooperation. Ridley's work teaches us these feelings aren't personal failings or just cultural problems. They're echoes of a million-year-old drama written into our biology. Understanding this doesn't excuse our behavior, but it helps us understand it. It gives us compassion for ourselves and others. When you feel the sting of jealousy, you can recognize it not as weakness, but as activation of an ancient program designed to protect a precious bond. When you see relentless pursuit of status and wealth, you can see it not just as greed but as the modern expression of an age-old quest for reproductive success. How can we apply this? First, by accepting that men and women are, on average, different. Not better or worse, but different. Our minds have been shaped for different, complementary roles. Pretending these differences don't exist is denying a fundamental part of humanity. True equality doesn't mean being identical. It means respecting and valuing those differences. Second, we can become more aware of our own programming. Next time you find yourself irresistibly drawn to someone, ask yourself why. Is it their wit, their status, their looks? You can't turn off the instinct, but by understanding it, you gain some control. You can choose whether to act on it and how. This, perhaps, is the true meaning of free will, not being free of our nature, but having the wisdom to rise above its more destructive impulses. Ultimately, the Red Queen is deeply optimistic. It shows us that out of conflict, competition, and endless struggle comes creativity, diversity, and beauty. The peacock's tail, born of vanity, is breathtaking. And the human mind, born of a sexual arms race, has given us Shakespeare, Mozart, and the ability to look back on our own creation and marvel at the strange and wonderful process that brought us here. That was a summary of The Red Queen by Matt Ridley. We've journeyed through the core ideas today, but here's the truth. A summary can only show you the map. The real adventure happens when you explore the territory yourself. It's in those quiet moments when a particular story or simple phrase from the author hits you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is your guide to decide if this book is a journey worth taking. If anything we've talked about sparked your curiosity, if you want to understand the deep why behind human nature, I urge you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just learning. It's an experience that can genuinely change how you see yourself, your relationships, and the entire human story. The link to the book is in the description. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe to Billionaire's Bookshelf. Your support helps us continue exploring these incredible books together, and it ensures you won't miss our next journey into another life-changing text. Let's keep growing together.